Welcome back to the Jeremy Awakens podcast, and I am beyond excited about today's guest, Adam Roa. And Adam is an acclaimed spoken word artist, transformational coach, and thought leader known for his unique ability to blend creativity with personal growth and spiritual wisdom. His work has impacted millions around the world, helping people awaken to their true potential through self-expression, healing, and conscious living. During this episode, Adam opens up about things that he's never shared before, including his most recent ayahuasca journey. And I'm confident that if you actually get present while listening to this episode, your life will transform. So stay present, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with the one and only Adam Roa. My intention for getting on here with you, bro, is really just, I feel like you are genuinely one of the best friends anyone could ever ask for.
Thank you for saying that, bro.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy because even just within a few months of knowing you, at the time, I remember just hitting you up when I was just navigating a really tough moment and experience of heartbreak. And the way that you held space for me and just listened and made yourself available despite your busy schedule, bro, really just spoke volumes about the type of human you are. I've never forgotten that experience, and I never will. And that's why I just feel very connected to you as a visionary and as a leader. And like, I'll always just be here as an ally in every way possible, bro. Like whatever it is I can do to serve and support your mission, just because I think you're one of the few people in this space that leads with so much authenticity, integrity, intention, and you're someone that's always doing the work. And I think with everything you've created up until now, it would be very easy to kind of just focus on like coaching and growing your business and stuff like that. And you've maintained this alignment to always be going inward and always be working on yourself despite everything else that's going on in your life. And that really inspires me just to have a similar approach to the way that I treat myself and the way that I navigate the world. And yeah, bro, that's why like any opportunity there is to like see you in real life, I'm like, I gotta jump on this, you know?
Yeah, well, thank you, bro. I really appreciate that. I feel very seen in that. And yeah, I think I'm a big believer in energy and frequency and all of the crazy things sometimes that people say in the new age spiritual space. But I believe in all that stuff. And I think ultimately it originates and stems from who we actually are, not who we pretend to be, not who we want to be, but who we actually are, what's true deep in our essence. And that can change. We shift it, we shape it, we become it. And the idea that I could call myself a friend but not hold space when a friend's going through something difficult doesn't even make sense to me. Like, what does that even mean? And the idea that I can call myself a leader and not be willing to go first into all of these places that I think as a collective, we need to go if we're actually going to make it out of this time that we're facing right now, would feel very inauthentic as well. And so I just try and live what I want to see, you know, be the change you want to see, live as an example. And I'll let history and people like you say nice things about me, hopefully. And in the interim, I'll just keep showing up.
Yeah. Is that always been what you've embodied in friendships and partnerships, just always making the extra effort to show up? Or is that something that you kind of picked up along your journey the last decade?
I think that friends have always been my family in a lot of ways. I wasn't in a family dynamic where I felt very close to my family. So I tried to spend as little time as possible at home. I didn't develop a friend relationship with my brother or my sister. I didn't open up to my mom or my dad. There's a lot of reasons for that we could get into, but as a result, I felt safer. I felt more comfortable. I felt more like I could be myself around friends. And so I valued my friendships so highly, and that never went away. But especially over the last 7 years, when my 10-year relationship ended, I suddenly needed my friends in an entirely different way. I needed to heal, and I needed to navigate depression and PTSD from childhood abuse and all of these things that prior to that, I had just been in a romantic partnership. So I always had someone there. And when that was gone, I really saw how important community is. Community is medicine. Community is not a luxury. It is a necessity. I think there is a reason why, as human beings, we have nervous systems that co-regulate. And for people who don't know what that means that actually we are exchanging information right now physically. My nervous system is picking up information from you. And that starts in utero when we're in the womb. We learn that with our mothers to pick up on our mother's nervous system. It's a safety mechanism. It's a biological response. So I know what's a threat and I know what's safe. And it's a way to calm me down when I'm in anxiety or et cetera, et cetera. And that is an indicator that we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to navigate this life alone. And we are biologically conditioned and built to operate within tribe. And I think that we have built a society in which the metric of success is how isolated you can be. Like think about it like this. How crazy is it that the ultimate sign of you've made it is you can buy a private island? Let's say, like, I'm going to buy a private island. Like, that's something to aspire to, so I can have no one around. I can literally have my own private, completely isolated island. I'm going to buy really nice houses that show how successful I am, which are in gated communities that most people can't get to and can't see beyond my fence. And then even when they open my gate, I have to drive a quarter mile just to get to the house. And the house is so big that when you're on one wing of the house, you have no idea if anyone else is even in the house. And like, we have attached success to isolation. And when you create feedback loops like that, what do you expect to happen? We are facing a crisis of separation and depression and isolation because we've built our success on it.
Wow. I know there's a lot of cultures, I don't think America is one of them, where they are super intentional about the environment in which a pregnant mother is navigating. Like, they'll make sure to avoid all stressful situations. If there's people fighting, they'll make sure to remove her. And I think it's for the reason that you just mentioned, is like that nervous system of the newborn is going to be impacted by the environment in which it's brought up in, right? And I think we oftentimes like forget about that. And then also for you being so sensitive to energy and understanding like how our nervous systems do co-regulate, and that oftentimes is how not safe we feel in terms of like expressing ourselves with a specific person. how does that affect, or how does that come back to the connection with your siblings and your parents in terms of like feeling safe to share the things that maybe you share with your friends or you share online, but don't necessarily feel safe sharing with them, if that makes sense?
Well, I feel safe sharing with them now. It's gotten to a place where I share so openly with anyone and everyone. I share online. If you ask me any question on this podcast, I'll answer it honestly. I don't feel I hide out from anyone, and I feel I'm pretty authentic. I mean, we have different roles that we play, right? How we show up with certain people will differ. It doesn't make us inauthentic, but there's nothing that I feel unsafe to share with the world. I've tested myself in that way. If I want to share it, I'll share it. Now, with my family, what's been interesting for me to notice is when I'm around them, there's an energetic shift in me where I go quiet. I just sort of shut down a little bit in a very interesting way that I'll be excited to visit my parents. I'm like looking forward to it. I'm like, man, I miss my parents. I'm going to go. And I get there. And then as soon as I'm there, it's just quiet and just, I don't know what to say. And I'll try and create conversation and it just doesn't go anywhere. You know, it's like that forced thing. And I will ask some questions of my dad, who's a very stoic Filipino male. And so I'll just say, hey, Pop, when you were growing up, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah. And we say, blah, 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 blah. Done. There's no continuation. And so it's very difficult. And I've been in the exploration very recently because I was just spending time with them. I'm about to go see them next week as well. I'm in the exploration of how to shift that. I actually don't know how. I'm trying different things. I'm expressing that I would love to see it change, but also being okay if it doesn't, you know, being okay if it's just, we don't have that much to talk about. That's okay. There are people that you just don't have ease of conversation with. And it's unfortunate if it's your mom and dad, but you're not going to have the type of friendship we have where we could just hang out and talk for hours. That's not everyone, you know, we don't have that with everybody.
Yeah. I don't even think we've ever actually spoken about your siblings. Now that I think about it, like just the fact when you mentioned that you have a brother and sister, I'm like, wow, I must be a shitty friend for not remembering that. Or like maybe our conversations just never brought us to a point where we spoke about your siblings. Are they younger, older?
They're both younger. My sister lives in Miami. Oh, I mean, I've talked about them before. You're just a bad friend, clearly.
No, dude, your sister lives in Miami?
Yeah. She hasn't always, but she's been off and on living in Miami. She's lived in Miami for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
What the fuck, bro? Yeah, I feel like
she's gone to South Point. She's done the whole South Point thing for a while. You might even have run into her and not have known as my sister. I mean,
what's her name?
Brittany. Brittany.
Brittany.
Yeah.
Roa?
Yeah.
What?
So she, I mean, I don't know what you want to talk about, but yeah, I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and I love them very much. But we have developed. My sister and I are closer than my brother and I. But when we say closeness, for example, she sat ayahuasca ceremonies and has called me after them to help her integrate, share what's going on. I'm aware of a lot of what's going on in her life. I've helped her through some things. It's very much an older brother helping younger sister dynamic. But we could go weeks without communication. And same with my brother. I'll go even longer without communication. So that's what I mean. There's no secrets. Like I'm very open, but in terms of how often I'm communicating with my parents or my brother and sister, it's not oh, we talk every couple days.
Right.
But I'm not like that. To be fair, I'm not like that with anyone. You know, even you and I, we could go weeks without actually having any real back and forth. Maybe we'll send a message like, I love getting a message from you when you're saying, let's crush Monday. We got it. You know, one of those kinds of things.
Right.
But outside of that, and then I give you a heart, you know, acknowledgement, we might go weeks without talking. And so what is closeness? I think that's also something to really be in the inquiry of too. What does it mean to be close? To not talk for weeks, but know you could talk about anything, or to talk every day, but have it be surface level. You know, there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Yeah. I'm also curious because you provide support for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Friends, family, your community, your clients. And I'm sure you have people in your life that you reach out to get support from as well. I just feel like it's probably asymmetrical and there's not like a full flow of reciprocity, if that makes sense. I'm curious to know, is that ever something that's present for you in terms of like you give so much, but you may not necessarily receive anywhere near the amount of love that you're pouring out?
That's an interesting question. I've gone back and forth with it, I think, at various different times. I hire support. So I have a spiritual advisor that I work with. I also have a business coach that I work with. I was working with an IFS therapist for a while. So I hire support, definitely. That's a part of it. I have friends that I can call up who, depending on the situation or what I'm going through, they're the ones that I would bring in for if I'm going through a relationship thing or whatever. I'm putting on my first like 2-day really interesting event in Miami. So I call up my friend Preston Smiles to be like, yo, you do a 2-day event all the time. You've gotten really dialed with it. I just have some questions about how so like, I have such a huge network that I'm almost like, I have specialists, and depending on what I need support with, I'll call them in, and I feel I have probably 25, 30 people that I think I could call up at any time and say, hey, I need support with this thing. And they would help me. And I went through a really hard period of time where I was dealing with some depression when I was living here in Miami. Actually, I don't know if you remember, I was in a relationship that was very challenging. And while I was navigating that, I decided to stop reaching out to people. I'm the kind of person, I'll wake up in the mornings, probably at least once a week, and I'll just send voice notes to people and let them know I love them and I'm thinking about them. And you've gotten some of those from me at times. It's just like, yo, thinking about you. I hope you're doing really well. I want to acknowledge you for whatever. And it's almost part of my gratitude practice at times, just to acknowledge people that have been important to me in my life. And I stopped doing it for a while I was in Miami, and I said, let's see who reaches out to me. And there were a number of people that I was really hurt to realize when I stopped reaching out, I don't hear from them anymore. And some of those people I cut out. Well, my honest to God best friend, I had several conversations about this very thing, and it didn't shift. And I finally just let him know. I said, hey, I have no animosity, but I'm removing you from the inner circle of my life. And we've been best friends for, I don't know, 6 years maybe. And I just longer, actually 10, I don't know. It's a long time. We've sat in ceremonies together. We've sat in dietas down in Peru together. I mean, really deep, brother. And I just realized I'm done with the one-sided dynamic. It just didn't feel good. So I know I'm kind of all over the place with the answer, but I think I've gone through periods where I've needed support and people haven't been there, and that hurt. And so I cut those people out. And then the rest of the time I just adjust my expectations. I think maybe the core of all of it is we have these circles of people in our lives, and there is only so much room in each circle. And so how many people can you really say are your closest friends? The ones that you would, if they called you up and they needed something, you would get on a flight. You would drop what you're doing. Like, how many of those can you really have? And there's different expectations, because love is unconditional, but relationships are not. Relationships are very conditional. And so to be in my inner circle, there's conditions. And you could be in circle 2 or circle 3 or circle 4, you know, coming out. I have, in what I think is probably circle 2, I have probably a larger circle 2 than the vast majority, because I've been so nomadic and I have people all around the world. I got homies that I won't talk to for months, but we've been through so much. When I was living in LA or whatever, that I could call up and say, hey, I really need support. They might not be getting on a plane, but they would help me in so many ways. Then circle 3 is massive when you get into social media and the people I could reach out to help me promote my book or this or that or whatever. It's huge, but that inner circle is sacred. And I think that we need to adjust our expectations on each level of what those circles mean and just get really clear what our boundaries are. Because when you expect someone who's to show up as a circle 1 person, but in their mind, you're a circle 2 person, you're going to have hurt feelings.
Wow. This honestly kind of just reminds me of, I was telling Thor last night on my balcony.
Not the Thor, the friend, not the Greek god.
Yes, this guy right here. He
Just so people are knowing, because like
Norwegian
we're talking about ceremonies, people be like, do you pray to Thor?
Yeah. Well, I realize when you're speaking about like expectations from certain people and certain friendships, I realized that this most recent partnership that I was in, I got so attached to this vision that I had built up in my mind of what we could co-create together in terms of like family and like co-creating like at events and ceremonies and holding space. And I literally had like very clear visions of this. And I feel like I got so attached to the potential that I saw, because those expectations, I feel like, weren't necessarily reciprocated. It set me up for just like massive sadness and disappointment. And like, for me, that's been the most challenging part of the moving on process, is like obviously the distance and the daily talking and connecting, and also like these expectations that I had created in my mind, if that makes sense.
Totally. It makes a ton of sense. I think that's one of the biggest issues that we all face is, can we consistently see people for who they actually are, not the vision of what we want them to be? In romantic partnership, oftentimes we're going out into the world trying to fit people into our vision, saying, wow, this is actually what I want in partnership. And so I am going to see you through the lens of that and like see, ooh, she's kind of this. And if I just did it like this, and we're trying to fit them into what we want them to be. And that is eventually going to implode. And I've been guilty of this. I have done this a lot because I am such a romantic and I'm such a idealist when it comes to love, that I have gone through the world searching for the person who fits my vision, which has prevented me from seeing the reality of who's in front of me a lot. And I think when you are, that's in every relationship, not just romantic partnership. And the question that I had to ask myself was, my heart feels like it's broken, but am I mourning the loss of her? And am I mourning the loss of the vision?
How have you navigated heartbreak over the years? Like, how has your healing process evolved? You know, obviously the 10-year relationship, that probably took a long time, and there's probably still stuff to this day that shows up. But, you know, how has your process evolved over time in regards to healing from heartbreak?
Well, I put out a course called The Art of Breaking Up because I went through a number of breakups and took kind of my mind synthesizing things because I got better at breakups. I did. I got better at navigating them. I got better at understanding them. And I think the core piece around breakups in particular that is important for people to understand is that when you go through a breakup, you don't go from being in relationship to being single. You go from being in relationship into a breakup process. And on the other side of that process, you will be single. And single meaning you are available for another relationship. And the breakup process itself is often misunderstood. I think when we go through a breakup, a lot of people assume, okay, well, the breakup process is me getting over this person. That's really what I'm here to do. Get over this person and move on. And at that point, people are looking at what are the ways in which I can get over them and move on. And that most often looks like trying to replace them with something, replace them with another person, replace them with sex, replace them with friends, replace them with fill in the blank, replace them with something. But that's when you get into the energetics of it, I think it's actually quite different. There was a reason why you and her were attracted to each other. And that means there was a frequency match. There was something that pulled you together. And if the two of you separate, but you stay the same people, there's always going to be that frequency match. There's always going to be something that's still pulling you together. And that's where initially in a breakup process, there's like, it could work. Maybe we could work it out. I still miss them. Is that because you're still the same people? But if you take the actual lessons and you grow and you evolve in the unique opportunity that a breakup gives you, you shift internally. And when you shift internally on like a scientific level, your frequency shifts. And once your frequency shifts, you are no longer attracted to the old frequency. So you naturally won't want the person that she was. And that's when you're going to realize, oh, I actually feel as though I've moved on because I am not drawn to what I was drawn to before. But the only way that happens is through an inner shift.
That's so fucking powerful, bro. Like the way you just broke that down is really powerful, because I'm definitely guilty of not allowing myself to fully feel and process after a relationship ends, and either numbing myself with work, numbing myself with intimacy from someone that I don't really feel that strong connection with. And this most recent time, like the last 6 weeks, I've really done my best to use the breakup as an opportunity to build myself up again and really get grounded in my routines and rituals that I realized, like, some of which fell to the wayside because I was traveling and stuff like that, but also probably because I got disconnected from part of myself, you know? So it's been a really powerful opportunity to actually like sit with myself and sit with the discomfort and sit with the indecisiveness of like, oh shit, I really feel like I want to message this person to just check in and see how she's doing. And also realizing that's not going to help the process at all. So not doing that, right? And really catching myself in those moments, you know? And yeah, I guess, fuck. So like in your most recent situation, it's interesting, right? Because, you know, and we don't have to like mention names or like get super into it, but it was so interesting for me to observe it as an outsider because I was like I was just like, when I would see you guys together and like when you guys were doing well and stuff, and I'm like, yo, there's such a fucking beautiful dynamic couple that can do so much magic together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's probably glimpses of that, obviously, which is why you did your best to like make things work. And I was getting so fucking like, I would get so frustrated at like seeing you unhappy and sad and like always seeming to be in conflict with this person. And it was just really frustrating for me to watch as a friend, you know? And yeah, it was just shitty. And I can't imagine what it was like for you.
I mean, on my podcast recently, I had a relationship expert. Her name is Annie Lala. And my podcast is called The Creative Path for anyone who's interested. But the interview I did with her was interesting because during this relationship that you're talking about, I had never experienced such conflict. I legitimately felt as if everything was turning into a fight. Everything, I was fighting for every inch of space, to be heard, to prove that I was trustworthy, because there was so much distrust of the masculine that I was dealing with in that. And I was thinking to myself, it's got to be easier than this. If it was right, it would be easier. And Annie Lala, she has this perspective where she says, love is when you find someone who's worth the suffering. And she shared in a podcast interview that for her, it's not so much about that person that just completes you and it's everything that you ever wanted. It's that person that you can't seem to let go of. For whatever it is, you just can't seem to let go of them. You're willing to suffer through it with them. That's how you know it's the one. And so my ex sent me that podcast and said, see, we are that right now. We are working through it and we're building our relationship, and all of this conflict is just making us stronger. And it really threw me for a loop, because I was in the camp of it's got to be easier. And so I stuck it out and I pushed through as far as I could. And what's interesting is that I went to a wedding in Austin, and while at that wedding, I had several conversations with people who had been married. My friend Johnny, just getting married, and I had seen him navigate a 3-year relationship that was super hard, tried to make work. I was in your position as a friend. I said to him, hey, at one point I said, hey bro, I don't think that this relationship makes you better. I don't see you happy with her. And I just need to let you know that we're in a loop. Every time I come back to Austin, it'll be 6 months later, you're in the same loop. And it's really hard for me to see. And I just had this honest conversation, and I was always there. And I said, I support you no matter what, but I just want to make sure you're seeing the loop. And anyway, that relationship ended. He went into over a year of what he calls the equation for calling in the one, which is God, celibacy, and semen retention.
Wow.
And so he went into that period for over a year. And then after that, he already knew this woman. They were already friends, but things opened up. They started dating, and now I was a groomsman in his wedding and a year later. And so the thing that he said to me was, it is so easy. It's so easy, man. And I've heard people say that, but I didn't have any experience of it. He said, it just flows. And it's not like we don't have conflict. It's not like we don't have things that we're working on, but it just works. And I have now heard that from at least 3 or 4 married couples. And it's something that I believe. I just believe it. And especially as someone who really tried to work through that very difficult, suffering, make it work dynamic, I've tried that and I just don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
So whether it could work or not, it's not what I want. And I now have evidence. I actually have evidence that I have seen of multiple people who were in tough dynamics, let those go, and then have found people where it just works.
So is this what triggered you're like 2 months in right now of celibacy, right?
Yeah.
So
For some people, that's not a long time, but for other people, they're like, wow, that is a long time. So I don't know, 2 months.
yeah. So,
And semen retention. Yeah.
okay. So did that experience witnessing your friend, did that trigger this, or did that just naturally occur?
Well, I had while I was traveling, I got to have a few fun flings, and little sort of love bubbles for, whether it was a week or something like that. And there was one in particular that was supposed to go for a week. And after 4 days, I just sat down with her and had this conversation. I said, hey, I don't think this is working. I think we end this experiment now. Yeah. And that was a huge step for me, because the old me, even 6 months ago, would have been, it's only 3 more days. Let's just let it continue. And I've gotten to that point where I'm really firm with my boundaries at this stage of what it is that I want, what it is that I'm available for. And I'm not willing to waste 3 days in an energetic that's not right. But what I noticed was I was still processing it. I was still, after it was done, I was still journaling about it. I was still looking at what could I have done better? What did I miss? That sort of thing. And then there was a day where I thought to myself, this is a fucking waste of my time. I'm waking up and I am journaling about a woman who is not my wife. And I made a decision in that moment. That is sacred space. My journal represents something, like, cause I'm journaling in the mornings, right? So that waking up in the morning is saying what my mind has been processing throughout the night, what my focus is going into the day. And here I am processing something that was meant to be just a fun week. What am I doing? This gets to be used to write poetry. This gets to be used on my business. This gets to be used on my vision. This gets to be used on my inner work of who I'm becoming. This gets to be used for so many other things that are such big priorities in my life, that the fact that these pages are being used for someone who is not my wife, who is not the person that I want to build a lifelong relationship with, that is a waste of energy. It is a waste of my time. It is a waste of journaling space. And so I made that decision before talking to my friend and went into a period of just removing myself from, I'm open to meeting my person, but I previously was just open to the feminine.
Right.
And now I'm not in the same way. I am very clearly just in my own space, in my own energy. And the woman who comes in that brings me out of that is going to be just absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to meet her.
Real quick, just because so many of you have been asking me about microdosing, I wanted to let you know that we just launched a very special opportunity for you to start your microdosing journey for just $222 per month. This includes the microdoses being shipped to you, and it also includes live coaching with me every single week and access to the best content that's going to help you defeat your anxiety, defeat your ADHD naturally, and escape big pharma forever. So if you are ready to tap in to deeper levels of focus, flow state, and presence, this is your sign to start your microdosing journey today. There's no long-term commitment. You can literally try it for 30 days and witness how your life transforms. Now, let's get back to the show. Yeah, that's beautiful, bro. I appreciate this. I'm like really just selfishly absorbing everything you're saying and like being a student right now and seeing how I can apply it to my own journey. I'm curious to know because you also, I remember, posted this meme. I think you've posted it multiple times, honestly, where it says like on the left, it's like, all right, I'm going to choose a path of like getting married and having kids and like going on a farm or something. And then the other one's like do an ayahuasca journey, something like that. Yeah. Right. You sat with Aya 2 nights ago.
Yeah. Less than 48 hours ago, I think.
So I'm curious to know 2 things. What initially brought you to the medicine? Like, where were you at in your life and what were you trying to work through and process that attracted you to ayahuasca and other plant modalities? So you can kind of drop into that first. And then I'm curious to know also what came up for you and what showed up 2 nights ago in your most recent experience.
Oh, that's fresh, man. So I first sat ayahuasca in January of 2013. So that was almost 12 years ago. 2012 was, to that point, the hardest year of my life. I was an actor in Los Angeles, a personal trainer, I had my own personal training business. Everything that I had identified myself as or with was being taken away from me in a lot of ways. My career, my finances, and it really culminated with my physical health because I was someone ran a stop sign and T-boned my car on my way to work, and I needed hip surgery. I had a concussion with migraines, and then a week later, the rental car that I had rented was hit and run on the side of the road and completely destroyed. And I had zero money. My bank account had been cleared out, literally cleared out by a shady acting manager who made me print out my bank account statement and write him a check for every dollar I had to get out of the contract. So after years struggling as an actor, I literally was at a financial zero and just falling apart. And here I was needing to continue personal training because I had zero money while I had a concussion and was getting migraines from the noise in the gym and limping around because I needed hip surgery. And so I broke. I legitimately just broke. And there's that saying that's cliche maybe, but it was so true for me, which is the cracks are where the light gets in. And so the cracks were the place where my humility finally showed up because I'd been so successful at so many things at a young age that I thought I had this thing figured out. Life was going to be easy. I was just going to be successful at everything. And I was humbled hard and out of pure desperation, basically wound up in an ayahuasca circle. And there's a whole story. It's actually very beautiful and synchronistic. And there's a psychic and all these things about how that happened. But I wound up in an ayahuasca circle and went from being more or less an atheist. If you couldn't prove it with science, I didn't believe it. And into the foundational spiritual beliefs that I have today of believing in all of this energy and connectedness and crystals and all of that esoteric stuff is the result of those ceremonies. I sat 2 ceremonies back to back and just changed my life forever.
11 years ago. You were early in the wave.
Almost 12. January will be my 12-year anniversary to grandmother.
I think we were the same age when we first did it, 27. And then this most recent ceremony, first of all, super grateful to experience combo with you on Tuesday. And yeah, bro, it was just really special to be right next to you and going through that and like purging next to each other. There's just something special about that, you know, about like, it's like the next level of our friendship, you know?
For sure.
We just
sharing ceremony space is so sacred, man.
Yeah. So I appreciate that invitation. And then the following night, you sat in a private ayahuasca ceremony. And I would love to be the first podcast and platform that you share what came up for you, bro.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is fresh. I mean, I haven't talked about it. So I think it's important for people to understand that I was molested when I was 5, but that was a repressed memory for 25 years. I didn't remember it till I was 30. And so my entire life, I've carried a sorrow, just a sadness, a heaviness that has always been present. I've never lived without it. I don't remember being without it. And over the last 3-4 months, I've had several different intuitives, spiritual people, advisors that have, through different types of readings, like a tarot reader and an astrologer, and these different people who have shared with me, you have a sorrow that needs to go. And finally, when I got this tarot reading done and they pulled the sorrow card and they're like, you have a sorrow that needs to go. I said, I don't fucking understand how. I get it. I know it. I feel it. I do. I just don't know what to do about it. Everyone keeps telling me it's there. I don't know what to do about it. And you know me, I'm deeply dedicated and devoted to my practices, to being the best version of me, to my prayer, to my spirituality. And yet I don't know. There's always been this thing. And so I went in with the intention to uncover and release that and cut those tethers. I'm about to go in and write my book for 2 months, a really deep portal, which is going to require me to read my journals that I've kept since 2007, go into all of these breakups, these relationships, this depression, all of it. And I'm going to be immersed in that. And I'm scared, truthfully, of what that might bring back up or trigger or different things. And so I've just wanted to cut tethers of this sorrow and enter into it with truly fresh eyes so I can write this book from that place. And so I went into this ceremony and I was asking for that. And I finally saw it. I finally got the answer. And it comes from, I have never actually rebuilt or had full trust in God, because there is a part of me that felt that God abandoned me when I was molested. And I wept for a very long time in ceremony a few nights ago for this part that just felt like you left, you know? Like God left me in that moment and he let that happen. And so I've worked so hard to build up a relationship with God. And it's so funny because I think most people that know me would say I have a faith and a trust in the divine and spirit in this that's really admirable. And yet, so it's kind of been hidden in plain sight, you know, maybe there's been an overcompensation of, I'm going to really give all my trust to it to try and trust. But what I discovered a few nights ago was that there has been a part of me that's always felt like he could leave again, that I can't fully trust. in spirit because I was abandoned once. And in the ceremony, there was the image of Jesus on the cross when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? And really feeling into that for Jesus to have committed his whole life to the message of God, and in his dying breaths feel like God left him. And I think to uncover this part was so massive because of course the sorrow has been there this entire time. I think that at our core, there's only a few fears that every single other fear can be boiled down into. One of them is the fear of death, but ultimately beneath that is the fear of abandonment from God, of disconnection from God. Because even when you actually feel that connection to God, the fear of death kind of goes away too. So our disconnection from God, I think, is in many ways the greatest fear that we can have as humans. And so to feel like that was possible, to think that I had evidence that I was someone who could be abandoned, has had me move through the world with a lack of full trust and a deep sorrow.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. So now that you got that download, what do you feel like is the path to get that full trust and recalibrate that relationship?
Well, that is a work in progress, right? Like that's my work, right? That's integration.
Yeah.
The ceremony's bringing awareness, but in the ceremony, there was a moment where I'd been sobbing for I don't even know how long and feeling abandoned and just begging for God to let me feel him, her, it. It's like, I want to feel you. I want to know you're here. And I was just begging for it for a really long time. And then the shaman, in such a beautiful, the magic of ceremony, the shaman starts chanting and singing like on a drum. And she's saying, I'm here. I'm everywhere. Literally, I'm everywhere. I'm in the eyes of your parents. You can find me. I'm always here. She's literally singing this in this moment. And so at that point, I'm hearing the words and I'm in my consciousness, I'm seeking God. I'm like calling in my parents and I'm looking for God there. And I'm calling in the flowers and the butterflies, and I'm calling in all of these things, and I'm searching for God with my consciousness. And then I arrive at my dog. And I've never loved anything like I love that creature. Legitimately, that creature opened my heart and shaped me into like a father-like energy in a way that I didn't even know was possible to love anything. Man, I fucking love that dog. And I said, that love is true. I have doubt. There's things I can't trust in. There's things I'm unsure of. I don't know how to rebuild trust with God. I don't know where God is, but that is true. That love is undeniable. It is unconditional. It is infinite. It is something that no one would be able to convince me is not true. What I feel for that creature, that love is so true. And if God is love, then there's God. That love that I feel, I don't even have to call it God, you know, but like that is true. And I can build on that as a thread to find myself into more. And where I can find gratitude and devotion and prayer is in knowing that the universe, spirit, God, the divine, like whatever we want to call it, brought her to me. In this life, whatever this algorithm looks like, whoever's in charge of it, whatever force is behind it, it gave me her. And so for that, I can be infinitely grateful. I can celebrate that. I can pray. I can cry tears of gratitude every day of my life for the rest of my life, because that's true. And so I have a starting point. And my work now is to redefine and rediscover and recreate maybe my first truly authentic relationship to God. And that's what I get to figure out. And that's why I woke up this morning and I spent 2 hours in prayer and in singing and in playing instruments and lighting a candle and like, that's faith. You know, what is faith? Faith is not something that you have in what you know, right? Like in those moments where it's like, oh yeah, Jeremy's right in front of me. I don't have to have faith that you're right in front of me. You're here. But I have faith that when I'm halfway around the world and I might be going through a tough time, that I could call you up and you would answer. Like there's some faith. Faith is what fills the spaces in which we don't have certainty. Faith is when we choose to fill the doubt with something. And so I don't know what this relationship looks like. I have a thread that I'm going to pull on, and I'm going to develop my faith, and I'm going to continue to build that relationship fresh now. And that's my work.
Thank you, brother, for sharing that. I really felt everything like so deeply. Yeah. You know what dog is spelled backwards?
God?
Probably no coincidence, man.
Yeah.
Damn. That's, oh, bro. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's podcast. Your support means the world. And if you're gaining value from this conversation, all I ask is that you show some love and share this episode with a friend. And maybe, just maybe, leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you happen to be watching and listening. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the show. I'm so grateful and happy that you had that download though. I'm really glad that you like cultivated the clarity as to what the root cause of that sadness and sorrow is.
I'm so grateful. So freaking grateful. I feel lighter.
Yeah.
I feel so much lighter to just be able to identify what it was. Like, of course. It's of course I would feel sadness. I've been walking through the world thinking that God abandoned me.
Yeah. It's going to be really powerful to see how you transmute that into the book writing process. It's going to be really, really powerful and transformational. And I'm just glad that you were able to kind of have that moment, and that Gracia like just held space for it and just like facilitated it even deeper.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand things like plant medicine, ayahuasca, they're not magic cures by any means. They are tools. And understand that I went into that ceremony having done a 72-hour water fast a few days earlier, having sat Cambo the day before,
Yeah.
having been super clean with my eating leading up to it, having cleared out a storage unit I had co-packed with an ex to just clear out that old energy. I was clearing the space, and I had the tarot reading and the different things. I've been working with my spiritual advisor, like these readings about sorrow and like the inquiry of what it might be. I was loosening the knot. And people have to understand, you don't go to a ceremony for a magic cure. The ceremony is part of a much bigger piece. If you want to transform your life, the ceremony is a piece of that.
Yeah.
How you're showing up to ceremony is a piece of that. What you do after ceremony is a piece of that.
Yeah.
And when we talk about psychedelics, I think so many people want the medicine to do the work for them.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you guys. Legitimately, nothing's going to do the work for you. I think that this new age spiritual thing of like, yeah, we're all divine and you are born birthright of abundance. Like, yes. And you earn it. You earn it through your actions. You earn it through your devotion. You earn it through your faith. You earn it. And it's sad for me to see this sense of entitlement and laziness carry over into the spiritual space. Where it's like, I can just be a fucking degenerate half the time, and then I'm just going to take a bunch of ayahuasca and think that like I've done my work. No, that's not how it works. You take action and you become that person day after day, hour after hour, and the medicine can help you do that. But the medicine also knows how you show up at the altar. The medicine also knows what your intentions are. You can't hide in the ceremony space. You can hide outside of it. You can wrap yourself in the kimonos and the malas and the wide-brimmed hats and hang out in Bali and Tulum and Costa Rica and all the things. You can do all of that. But when you look in the mirror, when you sit at the altar, you know, and the medicine knows, God knows. And so that's why, full circle to what we talked about at the beginning, why I keep showing up, why I keep doing it is because I'm not here to lie to myself. And I hope that people listening to this are willing to be radically self-honest, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are. Maybe you have been lying to yourself, but the day that it stops is the day you're actually honest. You say, okay, I've been out of integrity. Great. Step one to getting back.
Damn, dog. I'm definitely going to be attending your sermons at your congregation. The preparation is so much of the ceremony, like the preparation, the diet, and like really committing to that process of cleansing yourself before even being served the medicine. And yeah, I think everything that you said is just so relevant right now in a world that I feel like spirituality is losing a lot of my faith in terms of the spiritual community, and people just oftentimes not showing up with integrity, at least in my experience, especially the last year. And some of these people who consider themselves to be the most spiritual are also the ones that have sat with plant medicine a bunch, whether it's ayahuasca, mushrooms, whatever. And at the end of the day, I think the beautiful thing about these medicines is that they always bring the truth to the surface. And they almost always give you exactly what you need, which is usually different from what you want, right? And they return you back to your most authentic self. Like, I'll never forget my first experience in 2018 in Peru when the shaman just said, like, eres la medicina. Like, that's what he would always return back to. Like, you are the medicine. And the deeper that I go on my journey, the more that I realize that the medicine just activates everything I need to see within myself that I already possess and I don't need to search externally to feel perfect, whole, and complete, because as long as I embody my truth and show up in that way every day with integrity and intention and with a heart that's open, I know that the outcomes and the results will reflect that in different areas of life. And I just think it's really important what you mentioned regarding medicine in general. And have I told you about my first like ayahuasca journey?
No.
So there's like a little overlap kind of between yours. So we were the same age. I was 27. And one of the things that I also want to just mention before I go on to this tangent is that the thing that's really important throughout the process that you were talking about is that you kept listening to the messages, right? Like it's very easy, you know, you got a couple readings and the same message keeps coming through. You could easily ignore that, but you're super tapped in, right? And you're like, you know what, there's something deeper here to explore. And then, you know, you have a lot of shit going on in your personal life and business life all the time. It's never a good time to just like do a 72-hour water fast and go on a deep inward journey, right? But you still committed to that and listen to the message. And I think for me, I'm always reminding myself to listen to my body. You're currently reading or listening to The Body Keeps the Score, right? Like our body's always giving us messages and downloads. And it's just about tuning in and actually listening to ourselves, you know, and that requires stillness. It requires the breath, because when you actually allow yourself to get quiet, the things that you need to hear get really loud. And then we actually have the tools to take action. It was crazy. I was visiting my parents in California, and 2 weeks away, I was supposed to attend a yoga teacher training in Costa Rica. And as I was going on this walk in my neighborhood, I got a very clear download that's like, you need to cancel that trip and do ayahuasca. And it was something I was searching for, like I was researching it for probably the last year. And it was just such a clear download. I was like, oh shit, all right. So I canceled the trip to Costa Rica, found a place in Peru. And at the time I was just really overwhelmed with I was a personal trainer at the time. And I knew I had a big vision in the world, but I also just felt overwhelmed in terms of not knowing like how to take action, like how to move in that direction and step into my power fully. And the first ceremony, bro, I'll tell you about both of them. The first one was really powerful because I am just deep in my journey and I get a tap on my shoulder and it's Nicki Minaj in my experience.
Nicki Minaj?
Yeah. And the funny thing about this, bro, is I'm not a fan of Nicki Minaj. Like she has a bunch of collabs with Drake and I usually always skip through her part.
Super Bass is great though. Come on. Super Bass, that song is great.
So basically, bro, in this experience, Nicki Minaj is tapping on my shoulder and she's like, yo, Jeremy, like, what's good? And I'm like, Nicki, like, what the fuck? And she's like, yeah, bro, like, I've been watching you. And I just want to let you know, like, I really fuck with you. And she's like, yo, I'm about to go on an Instagram live. And I would love for you to just share for 30 minutes, whatever you want to share with my fans. And I was like, this is wild. And keep in mind, I'm in this ayahuasca experience with like 15 complete strangers, right? Most of us, it's our first time. And typically in a ceremony space, it's like, you're not just supposed to be like speaking out loud and stuff like that for a long period of time. But anyways, I just start speaking and like.
As if you're on an Instagram live?
Exactly. Yeah. Like that. Swear. And I wish I had a recording of it. But what was really crazy about that was, you know, first of all, they let me continue going. Cause I think like someone came like a minute or two in just to like check in. And then the other one kind of like waved her off and like they just kept let me go. And then
you were like loud, like into the space.
Yeah, I'm sure I was like not screaming, but I was just like speaking.
Like everyone in the space could hear you. Got it.
Yes. So basically what happened was, you know, like 4 or 5 hours later after we finished the experience and we all met in the common area for soup. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning, bro, like 7 or 8 of the 15 people came up to me individually. And they basically just let me know how much my words helped them during their journey. And it was really fucking powerful, because one of the things that I was struggling to step into was the confidence to speak my truth and activate my throat chakra. So much of my identity had become attached to being a personal trainer and like my physical body. And I knew that my voice had power, and that whole experience just like gave me the affirmation I needed. So it was shortly thereafter that I started like creating content and just like being more active in that space.
Dope.
And then the second experience was really unexpected, completely uninvolved with the intention I went going in. But basically, I go into the experience. I have one older brother. He's 5 years older. So I'm 33. He's 38. Anyways, so I basically go into this experience, and just to give you a little backstory, I don't know how much I've shared. I think I've shared with you a little bit, but essentially when I was 13, my brother was 18. He went down a path of like drugs, alcohol. And for the next 15 years, we were completely separate, disconnected, would maybe talk here and there, but like pretty much until this experience of Aya, like non-existent relationship. And in that second ceremony, bro, I was just purging nonstop. And I realized very early on that I was not purging for myself. I was purging for my brother. And it was like all of the suppressed emotions that he had, all of the guilt, all of the shame, all of the embarrassment, all of the fear. And it was me releasing all of this for my brother. And it was really interesting because like on a somatic level, I felt everything that he had been holding on to within myself. And it gave me a whole new perspective of what my brother had gone through and navigated through that I was completely unaware of. So it cultivated this different level of compassion for my brother. And shortly thereafter, like that same evening, early morning, I called him from Peru and I just let him know like, yo, bro, like all the shit from the past, like it doesn't matter, dude. Like I fucking love you. And I just want to focus on, you know, rebuilding our relationship, whatever I can do, you know? And that has been a crazy 5 or 6 year journey ever since then. And now my brother's staying in my place in Miami Beach. So it's like come full circle. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for these different indigenous medicines, because I know how much they've impacted my life. I've seen how much they've impacted close friends, clients, families' lives. And the thing about that, when you're talking about your abandonment, the feeling abandoned by God, right? That whole experience showed me how much the being abandoned by my brother had profoundly shifted my entire life. Like I just numbed myself through it and just got so used to my brother not being there that I didn't really think about it often. But when I really felt into the experience, I realized how much this feeling of abandonment affected like every single one of my friendships, and how I never would let anyone get too close to me because I thought they would just fucking leave. And it was just such a powerful reflection to have. And I think ultimately, like, that's why I want to continue sharing these different medicines in a way that feels authentic and in integrity with me, because I just know what they bring to the surface when you actually infuse intention with them.
Yeah, they're incredible tools.
Yeah. And I'm also, if you're open to sharing, like, the suppressed memory of being abused when you were 5, did that show up in a ceremony?
Yeah, it showed up in 2 back-to-back. So it happened in one on a Friday evening, basically. And then that was what you could imagine, just the most intense experience. And then the next morning I went, that can't be, it can't. And so went into the second ceremony and got to experience it in a different way and have it confirmed. And then I've had it show up in various forms in other ceremonies over the years in different things. Like my first iboga, big iboga flood dose was very much around that and stuff. So, but it first unveiled itself in 2 back-to-back Aya journeys.
One of the things that I think people fear about psychedelics and plant medicine is that it's going to like detach them from the real world, right? They're going to like go so deep into these spiritual realms, and they're like not going to want to go back to work when they finish their experience. Witnessing you, I think, is a beautiful reflection of just understanding that these different tools and medicines, when used with intention, just dive you deeper into your purpose.
Well, I think it's important to mention to people that because I've encountered a lot of people who have that fear as well. And also just with coaching, like people who want to coach with me one-on-one sometimes are going, if I work with you, am I going to need to quit my job and go do this thing? And I go, do you want to quit your job? You know, do you want to leave your marriage? Because I'm not, the medicine or me or anything is not going to make you do something you don't want to do. But if what's actually under the surface is you have a bunch of shit that you want to do, that you are pretending you don't, if you're unhappy in your marriage, but you're pretending like everything's fine, if you're comfortable in your job, but really you have dreams of doing something else, then the medicines or good coaching will uncover that stuff. Absolutely. And so the medicine does not put anything into you that's like from mushrooms, like, oh, mushrooms wants me to be a shaman. No, it's whatever is under the surface to be revealed can be brought to the surface. And so anyone who's scared of those things, to me, is usually an indication that there's something that they're not being honest about with themselves.
Yeah. Adam, I'm curious, bro. You know, we've talked about a lot of, I don't want to say sad things, but some sad things, some like serious shit.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know.
They're your questions, bro.
I know, you're right. I'm the root cause of this sadness.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, man, like how often you allow yourself to just appreciate yourself and how far you've come. So I guess my question is, what do you love most about yourself?
My willingness to keep showing up. Probably. Yeah. The willingness to just keep loving, to keep trusting, to keep trying, to keep going. I've gone through a lot of hard things, and it's all relative. Everyone has their own struggles. But I feel just super proud of how I show up, the person that I am, who I've become, and the commitment I have to keep just being the best version of myself. I keep showing up in that way. And that's in every moment. That's the little things, man. It's the little things. How you show up for friends, how you start your mornings, how you end, how you correct yourself when you know you're off, all of that. Those decisions add up. And I'm really proud of who I've become. Yeah.
Hell yeah, bro. What do you think is like the next, what do you think is like, we were talking about this at lunch the other day, right? How like you're kind of figuring out, like, obviously you're going into your cocoon for this book, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, I've done these 2 different offerings this year, and they've both been super successful, with the most recent one feeling like in more alignment with what you want to share. And
the Artistic Entrepreneur Incubator Program, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'd love for you to kind of share this, because from my perspective, I think it's a beautiful immersion, like you say, of like the mind of an entrepreneur and the heart of an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like your framework for taking people on that path is really unique in the way that you speak about creativity, which we haven't even really spoken about today.
Yeah.
You know, like I would love to kind of just give you a little flow, an opportunity to just kind of like drop in on that, like creativity and also this immersion of the entrepreneur and the artist.
Yeah, I think that one of my core conflicts in my journey in my life has been how to merge my inner artist and my inner entrepreneur. I have both of those things. I have been very successful in both worlds. My artistry has reached hundreds of millions of people. I have the most viral poetry live performance in history. You Are You've Been Looking For has been viewed over 250 million times. And as an entrepreneur, I've been paid $1 million for my coaching. I've done $100,000 masterminds. I have anything. I've gotten to a place where anything that I launch, I'm able to now make money on it. And the question is not if it'll make money, it's just how much. Like that's a cool place to be. To like, it's not a business over here that's this thing that we need to keep going. It's literally Adam Roa saying, I want to do this. I'm going to try this. And then how much money are we going to make? Like that's fun. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to get to that place. But there's still been a conflict always of, yeah, but am I honoring my artist? And when I'm fully in my artistry, what about the part of me that loves coaching and teaching and actually loves building business? And so that conflict I know is not unique to me. There's a lot of people who feel that. And so I created this program called the Artistic Entrepreneur, which is an incubator. We have 26 people in it. And it's for people who have the heart of an artist and the mind of an entrepreneur, and helping them balance that and figure out how they don't need to be two separate things. Because the biggest misconception that artists have is that their art is powered by complete freedom. I'm completely free to create whatever and I need to be, to speak my truth in whatever way. I can't have these limitations. But the truth is, an artist can't create without limitation. The musician needs a certain number of notes or keys on a piano or guitar frets. The artist, the painter, needs a certain size of canvas. Every artist has some inherent level of limitation that they pour their creative energy into. They have a container to pour it into. And so when you understand that, then you see that entrepreneurship gives you the container. And now it's about how do you pour infinite amounts of your artistic creative energy into the container of your entrepreneurial endeavor. And when we get a little bit deeper into sort of the mystery school elements and the part that I love, which is it's actually our inner feminine and inner masculine, the structure and then the chaos, and blending those two. And ultimately, what I didn't even realize at the time, and now I've gotten really clear about, is my life has been filled and marked with magic. Whether it's being paid $1 million for coaching after, like, within 5 days, the most viral poetry performance, all of these different things, and you know a lot of them, these crazy experiences that people will look at me and go, oh, those are miracles. You have such good luck. One of my friends goes, oh, you're ordained, as if I'm special. But the truth is, I don't have a belief that I'm any more special than anyone else. I believe that it's possible for everyone, but that means that there's a way to do it. And so what this program has become in a lot of ways is an extension of my one-on-one coaching, because my one-on-one coaching, I tell people I take people to wizard school, and I really dive in and help them understand the energetics of reality, because we live in an algorithmic world. We live in an energetic world. So what do I mean by that? the phone that someone might be watching us on right now is imagery and sound. Cool. Underneath that is zeros and ones, binary code. They're both true. And similarly, this reality is the same. We are right now interfacing with images and sounds. That's true. That's spirituality in a lot of ways. That's myth and legend. That's feminine. But there is zeros and ones underneath all of this. There's an algorithm that is running all of it. The idea of entropy, of chaos, is just an algorithm too complex for our consciousness to actually comprehend. But the algorithm of reality, when you start to see it and understand it, you can now code your reality. Instead of being the person who's only using the iOS at surface level, you can rewrite the code. And so that's what I teach people in my one-on-one coaching. And so now I've tried to extend it into this program where I'm looking at, can I recreate magic? Sure, we're building our business and we're walking this path and I have a framework and we have structure to all of these things, but can we recreate magic where people are seeing more synchronicities, where people are having experiences like, you're not going to believe this. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Because there's a way to do that. There's a way to live your life in flow with the universal laws. There's a way to live in like the guy in the Matrix who can read the zeros and ones in the green screen. He's like, oh my gosh, Neo is doing this and doing this. And he's just looking at zeros and ones, but no one else can read it, but he can see it because he understands it. That is what's possible for everyone. And so I've been using this program to use the context of business and the structure of my 5 modules that I take people through and the weekly calls and all of that. That's the structure. But what's happening inside of that structure is a really magical journey. And so it's been really fun to do that and continue to evolve the way that I teach it.
Do you think you're going to keep running through it, or you're still kind of like deciding what the next chapter is?
The thing that I'm moving towards right now is a body of work. So like the energetic principles by which I teach certain things, like even the breakup. We talked about the breakup earlier, right? And you went, the way that you broke that down, I have way more that I can go into about how I break down even just a breakup from an energetic perspective. I can talk to you about money from an energetic perspective. I can talk to you about love and the masculine feminine dynamic from an energetic perspective. I can talk to you about creativity from an energetic perspective. And so my energetic perspective is something that I've been looking at really turning into a full body of work as more of a methodology modality. And like, that's the thing that's kind of like unfolding and developing right now. And so I don't know, maybe I'll run this program again. Maybe it'll be slightly different. It's within business. I'm super passionate about that, but I want to expand it into, I don't know what it'll be, but like the ability to give people a lens on life that's different and it's applicable to every area. And so that's the thing that I'm really finding a lot of energy around right now, and feels like I've needed to go full in on artist for a while and develop my understanding about art and creative energy and all these things. And I was successful in that. And then I went full entrepreneur. Since you've known me, I've really been full entrepreneur. There hasn't been a lot of art focus in the time since we've met. And I developed my perspectives on that. And now boom, 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 boom. And so it's coming. I don't know what it is, but I'm trusting.
Yeah. I think it's really like it will be sick. I can already visualize like those kind of, not lectures, but those sessions where you're breaking that shit down, because I think it is very unique and you do it in a way that makes it very digestible at the end of the day. Like I would love to actually make a little space before we wrap this up of your kind of perspective on navigating the masculine, feminine energies and like your experience with that and kind of the current conflict that we have in society today, where I feel like there is a lot of confusion almost about how masculine can I be, right? Like
Thor.
how can I tap more into my feminine, but also remain grounded in that masculine? I think these are questions that I have, and I think a lot of people have. So how do you navigate that space?
Well, I think if we're going to speak from the energetics of it, understand that women have a womb, which means that they literally have a portal by which souls enter the planet. So that portal means that they are connected. They are the doorway. They have 1 foot in life and 1 foot in death all the time. They're walking around with that. And so because of that, there's a consciousness that they carry of the infinite, of the void that we as men don't have. And it's not that we can't access it. We just don't move through the world with it in the same way. And what that means is that because they are connected to the infinite, they are always aware of more. And as a result, they will always want more. And this is why women have been the oracles throughout history. You go to the women as the oracles throughout history because of that connection to the infinite and the more that they're aware of. And so that's really important because as men, the masculine, we are naturally predisposed by design to want to penetrate the feminine. And by penetrating the feminine, we mean filling whatever space the feminine gives us. It literally, and in our physical environment, but also just we want to fill the feminine. And so when a woman you love says to you, I want this, our first instinct is, I want to give it to you. That's the design. Every man can relate to that. But what happens is that we have not already provided it, which means we will have to become more in order to provide it, right? And in order to become more, the only way out is through. So the energetics require us to expand our consciousness. Our consciousness is held in place by our fears, doubts, insecurities, and limiting beliefs. That's what holds our consciousness where it is. Every time we have an expansion of consciousness, it is because we have broken down some of those and moved out and through that. And so we will need to move through our fears, doubts, limiting beliefs, and insecurities in order to become more and expand our consciousness, in order to give the feminine what the feminine is asking for. Now, what is the deepest karmic wound of the masculine? It is that we are not enough. It is the fear that no matter what I do, how hard I try, I will fall short and I will be rejected for it. That your love will be taken away from me because I was not enough. And the masculine is yang energy. The masculine must move through it through doing, through action. That's how we expand, how we become more. And so the interesting thing is, once we face off with the part of us that says we can't do it, that we won't make it, that we face off, we move through it, we become more, we give our partner that thing that they've been asking for, we meet them. Now the feminine feels met. And the feminine expands through yin. The feminine expands through relaxation, because when the feminine is met, it relaxes its nervous system. A woman's nervous system, they feel held. They feel like you got me. And in that safety, there's a relaxation. And in that relaxation, there's an expansion. And in that expansion, suddenly the feminine becomes aware of more. But what is the deepest karmic wound of the feminine? It's that you are too much. That if you let all of yourself be seen, all of yourself be known, all of your desires be heard, that you will be rejected for it, that you will be shamed for it. Think about sexuality, the way we've shamed women for their sexuality in this culture across the planet. If you let all of that be seen, you will be shamed for it. You will be rejected. That love will be withdrawn for you. So there is this need for the feminine to move through that karmic wound of I am too much and actually own the more that they're now aware of. And in that ownership, they give voice to it. And what happens? They trigger the deepest karmic wound of the masculine. But they allow the opportunity for that dance to happen again. They've created the space once again for me as a man to become more in order to meet you, and for you to become more when you feel safe and met by me. And when we understand the energetics of how this is designed, and understand that this is the design at a like level of creation, which means that nothing can be exempt from it, which means that it has to be capable of triggering your deepest wounds. There can be no shadow immune to this, which is why romantic partnerships are so triggering. And so in that space of that dance, that deep, deep dance is how we can evolve. It's how we can understand that when your woman comes to you and says, hey, I want this, you can recognize, assuming, yes, sure, there's gold diggers and this whole thing, but there's a legitimate, when my partner of 10 years came to me and said, I want more intimacy from you, I said, you mean more sex? We can have more sex? She goes, no, more intimacy. I said, I don't know what the fuck that means. There's no secrets. We tell each other I don't know what that means. Again, I had to become more. I had to move through the fear that I wouldn't be able to do it, that I wouldn't be able to give her more intimacy because I believed I was giving her everything. But I became more. We hired a couples coaches we went on retreats. Like, I became more. And so when my partner comes to me, if I know that her voicing that she wants more from me is her dealing with a karmic wound of being too much, and she might have a fear that I'm going to reject her or shame her for voicing that, I have sensitivity and compassion for when she brings it. I create safety for when she brings it. And as a result, I create the space for her oracle to unlock. And then when she understands that her voicing that is going to trigger my karmic wound of not being enough, she can bring it to me with compassion. She can recognize that I'm going to fall on my face as I try and become more, that I'm going to be insecure as I work to give her what she wants. And she can love me through that and reassure me that she will not remove her love. And this is how we bring our consciousness into the relationship and into this dance. When you understand the energetics of what are happening, you don't have to go into just the symptoms. It's not just about how do I communicate. It's about the tricks and the tips of like, yes, great. We can create safe spaces. We can have eye contact and deep breathing and co-regulate, like all of that. Yes. But when you understand the energetics, it changes the game. And so that is why I'm so passionate about it from that perspective, and why I ultimately coach that one-on-one and want to develop out more of a body of work around this.
That was wild, bro. That was fucking lit. What do you suggest? Thank you for all of that, bro. Your energy was like so elevated when you were going through that. I can see how passionate you are.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super passionate. I'm also 48 hours out of Ayahu, so the medicine's speaking too.
Serious question though. What is the best way to actually like explain everything you just shared with a partner in terms of like navigating? Is it like literally just like clipping that 8-minute version and like watching it together on repeat together? And like really understanding everything that you just dropped in about? Because
I mean, it's work.
Yeah.
That's the work. So first of all, if you're listening to this and you were like, holy shit, send it to your partner.
Yeah.
That's a starting point. Like, send it to your partner. And then if the way that I describe things resonates with you, start following me and consuming my content. We're in this world of like, you see people who follow 3,000 people on Instagram. What the fuck are you doing following 3,000 people on Instagram?
Yeah.
Pick 10 people that are really like, back in the day, you had a guru, you had a shaman, you had disciples, right? You had disciples, discipline. There was a path that people followed. And now instead of going deep, people go wide. And they're like, ooh, if I see enough inspirational memes today, I'm going to feel like I accomplished something. And I'm not any less guilty of this. I sometimes question, why am I listening to my podcasts on 1.8x? Like, is it to, I think I can go through it faster so I can listen to more of it? Am I missing something? Am I missing the depth? I'm in this inquiry for myself, but the starting point is to learn from the people who have the wisdom. That's the starting point. Take their courses, buy their books, listen to their podcasts, watch their YouTube videos. It's never been easier for you to get wisdom from the right people, and you have that opportunity. So don't immediately turn this podcast off and go to the next one. Actually take this, discuss it with your partner, be like, oh yeah, I resonate with this. Okay, how can I go deeper into this thing? And that's the starting point, man. And beyond that, then you put it into practice. Then you actually have to integrate that awareness. And integration is the process of making new choices with new awareness.
Yeah. I think what's really useful about the framework that you broke down too is like identifying kind of like the deepest wound within both the masculine and feminine, and understanding where that's showing up and like how to navigate that and hold space through that.
And understanding that we have masculine and feminine in us.
Right.
All of us have masculine, feminine energy in us, which means we both have those wounds. Whether you're a man or a woman, or you're one of the 800 other categories that we have now, I don't know. But like the energy, those energies, alpha, omega energy, yin, yang energy, masculine, feminine, whatever you want to call it. We have both of those energies in us, which means we both have those wounds in us, which means that we are facing off with those triggers inside of just ourselves.
Yeah.
The part of me that knows there's more possible for me exists in me. The part of me that's afraid that I won't be able to meet that exists in me. It's there. And so navigating that energetic within ourselves is a huge piece to this as well. How do you hold space for a partner when you can't even hold space for your own inner feminine?
Curious to know if you ever feel like you need to hold back with your content, like just to stay on brand and just to like keep things flowing with like what you're doing, because I know you have opinions that might be considered controversial. And I'm curious, like, if you ever kind of wrestle with the idea of like leaning into some of those things, or if you kind of just have a framework of like, yo, like my page, my platform is really just designed for like X, Y, and Z. And like, I don't want to get caught up in any of the other shit like that could be considered like political or, you know, those type of things. Is that something that you've kind of thought about, or does it just kind of come intuitively?
Yeah, I do it when I feel like I wrote a poem that expressed some of my feelings around what was happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
I lost thousands of followers, thousands. And then I doubled down and I did an Instagram live for 45 minutes explaining the poem and being like, hey, here's what is actually happening here. And like I pick and choose where and when to do it. And I'm navigating where the platforms are. I don't think Instagram, for example, is a great space for intellectual debate. It's not set up for that. So I'm playing with my Creative Path podcast, and most of them are guest interviews, but I've been playing with getting back into individual podcasts, just me talking about a lot of what I've even been talking about here. You know, because when I'm interviewing people, I'm not really going into my methodology. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't seek it out, but I also, something that you and I might differ on, maybe not, is I don't believe in right and wrong. I actually don't believe that there's truth with a capital T. So most of what I see people arguing about is who's right, who's wrong, or what's true. And because I don't believe in those things, I don't really get caught up in those arguments. To me, I'm more interested in why you believe what you believe. And that's a really big thing, because there's this interesting thing that I think a lot of people have, and it would be interesting for people listening to this to see if they have it. which is they say, well, if I was in that position, I would blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Right. And if I had millions of dollars, if I lived here, if I did this, and they kind of create this moral hierarchy. And what I came to for myself is more of an evolutionary biology approach to it, where I believe that if I was born as you and I literally experienced absolutely everything that you have experienced to the T from the moment of conception to now, I would make all the same decisions you're making. To believe differently implies that there's some moral hierarchy on a soul level, that somehow my soul is more evolved than yours. And so if I came into your exact circumstances, my soul, being so much more evolved, would make different decisions. And I just don't believe that. I believe that when we incarnate, from that moment, we are now on a journey. And if I had been born Donald Trump, I would be making the same decisions as Donald Trump. It's an algorithm. You could see why. And I've removed the moral soul hierarchy aspect of it. And that just gets me to a place of curiosity. I want to understand why Donald Trump thinks the way that he does. I want to understand why people can kill other people or rape other people. I want to understand how that person could molest me. And I go into it with that curiosity as opposed to judgment. And that has me speak less on Instagram right now. One of the things that trends and what makes people go viral and all this stuff is when they take these really strong stances against certain things, and my approach is just different. And so I don't have those same messages in the same way, even though I don't condone it.
Right.
You know, like I'll speak out against things like pedophilia. Like obviously I will do everything in my waking days to help make sure that that's not happening anymore. But I don't vilify it in the same way that I used to maybe 10 years ago.
We'll definitely have to continue this convo. Are you going to be voting in a month?
I will be voting, yeah.
Do you know who you're voting for?
I haven't fully decided yet. I will either vote for Trump or I will vote for vote for independent.
Is there another person on the ballot?
I don't even know.
Because RFK was the independent, but now he's like on Trump.
I'm sure there's right, like libertarian or like there's always other people on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
They don't get any say. So the way that I look at voting is a couple things. One, so many people have died for our right to vote. So many people are dying across the globe to have the ability to vote in their countries, that to me, it's almost disrespectful not to.
Yeah.
So that's one. Two, I personally think, just politically, I think that to me, Kamala Harris represents the system. I think it's obvious that she's the system based on the fact that they almost unconstitutionally put her in this place. Like they didn't have any kind of democratic election of her as the candidate. And so they've hand selected her to go in there. She's the system. And I think the system is a bigger problem than any one person.
Yeah.
Do I align with Donald Trump? No, not in a lot of ways. There are policies of Kamala Harris's and the Democrats that I think are better than Republican. There are Republican policies that I think are better, like whatever it is. But I do think that at the very least, Donald Trump is somewhat outside the system, and him being elected would disrupt the system more. And I think the system needs disruption. And that's why I might vote, like I did in the last election, independent or libertarian, because I still want to honor the fact that I have a vote, but with my vote, I'm voting for an alternative to a bipartisan system. Because one of the reasons people don't vote for those third-party candidates is because they think there's no shot. But if more people voted for a third party candidate and you saw, wow, a third party candidate actually got 11% of the vote, it's the highest number in history. Well, the next election, people might be more inclined to vote for an independent. But if I say, well, there's no hope, that it's never going to happen, and then that person gets like 1% vote, then the next election, what's the chances that someone thinks that's even possible? And if we don't think it's possible, it'll never shift.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my perspective is if anyone's on the fence, right? Like you're genuinely on the fence, I think you can look to someone like RFK, who was running as an independent, who is the most anti-establishment person you could imagine, who's dedicated his whole life to like exposing big pharma and actually like prioritizing health and healing. I think that would be a really fresh breath of air for this country, moving in the right direction. And yeah, most of the people I feel like who attack Trump attack him. They don't attack his policies usually. And
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
yeah.
And one thing that you know about Trump is you know where he stands. He's pretty fucking authentic when it comes to that. He's so not politically correct that it's actually humorous that he is likely to be the president again. It's just comical. And it's also, at least for me, a little refreshing to know like I know where this guy stands. Like he's a very imperfect human being.
Yeah. You also know where the Nazis stood. It doesn't, just because you know where someone stands doesn't mean that's a reason to support them. So I think that there's a very fine line of, like, to me, what you're speaking to is, again, more of an issue of a systemic problem, which is the fact that we're going to vote for someone just because they're refreshing means that the system's gotten so fake and so toxic that that person now deserves our vote just because they're not that.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be, I think, as just a society. And I agree with you about RFK Jr. I would have voted for him had he been running. The fact that he's backing Trump and he will be given, I think it was Make America Healthy Again or whatever it is that he's going to get if Trump's elected, is a reason to be excited. I also, but like Trump pulling out of the Paris Accord is a really, I'm not sure I agree with that. And there's just like going into policy, I'm not sure. And ultimately, I think that the political situation in this country is sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad, and it needs to be rethought out, reorganized, all of those things. And my hope is that we're moving in that direction. There are a lot of organizations that are grassroots level trying to see shifts. And I don't know, man, if it doesn't shift, I don't know how we get out of a really dark like timeline that we're on. The policies, we can't really change policy without voting. We can't vote in anyone but two awful candidates that were being served up. That's just, we're going to continue. It's going to continue to get worse and worse. And so I don't really get into the political debates. Obviously you've asked me and I'm going to be honest about what I think.
Yeah.
But I hope that people are at the very least voting.
Yeah. One of the things that we're not going to get into this podcast, because we're about to end this episode, is your experience with the whole, it's called ISTA, right?
Yeah. The International School for Temple Arts. It's sort of like a Tantra, sex positive retreat. And yeah.
So maybe we'll talk offline about that. I want to hear about your experience.
Yeah.
I really just want to give you the opportunity, bro, to share anything that we didn't get to today, anything from your heart that you just feel called to channel through.
I mean, I don't know how long we've been going. It feels like we've covered a lot. And yeah, I just really want to say thank you for having me on. Thank you for the conversations. Thank you for your friendship. And also tell everybody who's listening to this how much they're a part of the solution just by listening to this. And the real work begins by taking this and turning it into action. If you don't turn it into action, if you don't make some new choices, if you don't do something differently, your life will not shift just because you listen to this podcast. And I have no interest in having more followers that don't shift their lives. I have no interest in having more listeners that don't shift their lives. To me, I'm here to help people shift their lives, and that will require action. So I just want to remind people to take some action, even if it's one thing from this, even if it's just having a conversation with someone based off of this and diving into it further or journaling about it or whatever. That's the next step that I would encourage everyone to take.
Hell yeah. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Adam Roa.
Perfect. Yeah. And make sure you follow me and subscribe and share out and do all the things so that my audience grows, and then I can make more money, and then I can be part of the system that I'm trying to get you out of.
Oh, let's fucking go. Much love, everybody.
Thank you.
You did it. You made it to the end of the podcast. I am so proud of you for pursuing this path of becoming the best version of yourself. Now, if this episode provided you value, then all I ask is that you share it with a friend and check out some of our other episodes, because my mission is to really bring you the best people in the world so you can become the most elevated version of yourself. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you next time.